Okay. Super. Good. I saw a whole panel. That's good. That's great.
I'd ask everyone to take your seats. We're going to start here in a moment. Okay, you can go ahead on the record. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Marie-Therese Dominguez, the Commissioner of the New York State Department of Transportation, and Rick Marquis, the Administrator of the Federal Highway Administration's New York Division, I welcome you all to this I-81 Viaduct Project public hearing. My name is Brody Smith, and I'm serving as the moderator for this public hearing. There's a stenographer seated in front of me. She will record the proceedings of this meeting, and a verbatim transcript will be produced. I'm going to read an opening statement, which will be followed by a brief pre-recorded presentation on the screen to my right. When the presentation is finished, I will begin the moderated oral comment session. So let's begin. The New York State Department of Transportation, in cooperation with the Federal Highway Administration, published a draft design report / draft environmental impact statement, draft section 4F evaluation for the I-81 Viaduct project on July 16, 2021. The project has been advanced in accordance with the requirements of the National Environmental Protection Policy Act, NEPA, codified at 40 CFR parts 1500 through 1508. The Federal Highway Administration's environmental impact and related procedures, final rule at 23 CFR Part 771, and the New York State Department of Transportation procedures for the implementation of the State Environmental Quality Review Act at 17 New York Codes, Rules and Regulations, Part 15, in accordance with the provisions of Article 2 of the New York State Eminent Domain Procedure Law. The publication of the DDR/DEIS began the public comment period on this document, which will extend until 5 p.m. Eastern Time on September 14th, 2021. The project hearing is being conducted to obtain comments on the project's DDR/DEIS and the right-of-way acquisition process. The DDR/DEIS is available for review at this hearing on the project's website, which is www.dot.ny.gov/I-81 opportunities, and at libraries and other public facilities throughout Greater Syracuse. The DDR/DEIS describes the project, the consideration of social, economic, and environmental effects that would result from the implementation of the project, and measures to mitigate those adverse effects. The hearing provides the public an opportunity to make formal statements of positions before any project decisions are made. The agencies will review and consider public comments submitted during the established 60-day public comment period. Responses to substantive comments will be included in the project's final design report / final environmental impact statement, which is anticipated to be published by the end of 2021. If you wish to make an oral statement, you must fill out one of the speaker cards at the registration desk through those doors to the rear, or the welcome table if you've not already done so. Persons may make oral comments in one of two ways. If you want to comment in front of all attendees in this room here, I'll call on you, and I'll ask you to come up to that microphone right there at the appropriate time to give your comments. If you'd prefer to give comments, but you don't want to give them in this room in front of a crowd, you may comment in private at any time this afternoon There's a stenographer that's seated to the left of the table in the foyer, and you can sign up there, and you can give verbal comments there, which will be recorded by the stenographer. In addition to comments at this hearing, comments will be accepted in the following other ways. 1, written comments may be sent via U.S. mail to Mark Frechette, P.E., Project Director, New York State Department of Transportation, Region 3, 333 East Washington Street, Syracuse, New York, 13202. Or Rick Markey, the Division Administrator, Federal Highway Administration, the Leo W. O'Brien Federal Building, 11A Clinton Avenue, Suite 719, Albany, New York, 12207. The second way you can comment is by electronically. Electronic comments forms via the project's website are available, and that web address again is www.dot.ny.gov/I-81 opportunities. You can email comments if you choose to do so at I-81opportunities@dot.ny.gov. And finally, there's a telephone voicemail system. If you want to provide comments in that way, you may use the project hotline, which is 1-855-I-81-TALK. That's 855-481-8255. Information on how to submit written comments is also given on the project website. Everything I just read to you is there. You can elect to submit comments both orally and in writing if you choose to do so. Written statements and oral statements will be given the same weight. Again, public comments will be accepted until 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 14, 2021. Before we begin accepting any oral comments in this room here today, we will play a pre-recorded presentation on the screen to my right about the project. After the presentation, I'll give you a few additional instructions on how we can take your oral comments. Thank you.
Welcome to the public hearing for the Interstate 81 or I-81 Viaduct Project Draft Environmental Impact Statement, or DEIS. The public hearing is an opportunity for the public to provide oral testimony on the DEIS. This public hearing will satisfy New York's Eminent Domain Procedure Law, or EDPL, public hearing requirements. The New York State Department of Transportation, or NYSDOT, and the Federal Highway Administration, or FHWA, published the project's DEIS on July 16, 2021. This date also marks the start of the DEIS public comment period, which will be open for 60 days through 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 14, 2021. The document is available for review on our project website, as well as at local libraries and town halls throughout metropolitan Syracuse. The DEIS documents the evaluation of the project's reasonable alternatives and the social, economic, and environmental effects that would result from the implementation of the alternatives. The following 3 alternatives were evaluated in the DEIS: the no-build, the Viaduct Alternative, and the Community Grid Alternative. The no-build alternative serves as the baseline against which the build alternatives are compared. The 2 build alternatives are the Viaduct Alternative, which would replace the existing I-81 viaduct with a new viaduct built to current design standards, and the Community Grid Alternative, which would remove the viaduct from the railway bridge near Renwick Avenue to Interstate 690, or I-690, replace it with a city street, and disperse traffic throughout the city street grid. I-81 would be rerouted to Interstate 481, or I-481, under the Community Grid Alternative. NYSDOT has identified the Community Grid Alternative as the preferred alternative because it best meets the project's purpose, objectives, and needs. The project area is located within the municipalities of Syracuse, North Syracuse, Cicero, East Syracuse, and DeWitt in Onondaga County. and it includes portions of I-81, I-690, and I-481. This area includes the southern and northern interchanges of I-81 with I-481, exit 16A and 29 respectively, the portion of I-81 between approximately East Brighton Avenue and 0.7 miles north of Hiawatha Boulevard, including the I-81 Viaduct and the I-81 I-690 interchange in downtown Syracuse, the portions of I-690 between Leavenworth Street and Beach Street, and between approximately Hiawatha Boulevard West and Bear Street, and I-481 between New York State Route 5 and the New York State Thruway, I-90. The purpose of the project is to address structural deficiencies and non-standard highway features while creating an improved transportation corridor through the city of Syracuse that meets the transportation needs and provides the infrastructure to support long-range transportation planning efforts. The project is needed to improve traffic flow and safety and to address aging infrastructure. There is also a need for transportation infrastructure to support long-range planning efforts to improve pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure and to improve transit amenities. Based on a balanced consideration of the need for safe and efficient transportation, the social, economic, and environmental effects of the project alternatives, and national, state, and local environmental protection goals, the NYSDOT and FHWA have identified the community grid alternative as the project's preferred alternative. The community grid alternative would remove the I-81 viaduct, which is recognized in City of Syracuse and Onondaga County land use plans as a physical and visual barrier between neighborhoods. The portion of existing I-81 between its northern and southern intersections with I-481 would be redesignated as a business loop of I-81. What is a business loop? According to the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, a business route is a route principally within the corporate limits of a city, which provides the traveling public an opportunity to travel through that city. A business loop is a route that leads into a downtown business district and returns to the freeway at the other end. Business Loop 81, or BL81, would continue to be a high-speed roadway south of MLK Jr. East and north of I-690. The community grid alternative includes multiple improvements to help disperse traffic and improve access to and from key destinations within downtown Syracuse. For example, the addition of the I-690 interchange at Krause and Irving Avenues would create a new point of access to University Hill. Removal of the elevated West Street overpass and ramps to and from I-690 would reestablish connectivity between downtown and the near West Side. The alternative also includes a new northbound exit from BL81 to Colvin Street to provide a direct link from the south to University Hill. The community grid alternative would create the potential for a canal district, offering opportunities for new and enhanced public spaces as a result of the removal of transportation infrastructure associated with I-81 and its interchanges. The removal of transportation infrastructure would also allow for the creation of new gateways to neighborhoods, including MLK Jr. East, where a roundabout would be built, and at Van Buren Street. The removal of infrastructure in the West Street area would allow for the creation of a new path along the west bank of Onondaga Creek, between Erie Boulevard and Evans Street, providing access to views, which are currently obstructed, of a historic Erie Canal aqueduct and stone bridge over the creek. Improvements to BL81 and I-690 would be made to increase capacity and improve traffic operations. These include a new lane added to the northern segment of BL-81, from I-690 to Hiawatha Boulevard, new on- and off-ramps at Bear Street, and reconstruction of I-690 from Leavenworth Avenue to Beach Street. The community grid alternative would improve key connections between neighborhoods and key destinations and introduce a host of bicycle and pedestrian amenities, including wider sidewalks, cycle tracks, and shared use or bicycle and pedestrian paths, curb bump outs to reduce pedestrian crossing distance, and landscaped medians for pedestrian refuge. These features would improve mobility and accessibility for pedestrians and cyclists, including the elderly and transit users. The community grid alternative would remove the viaduct and reconstruct Almond Street as a signalized city street for vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists, and enhance neighborhood connectivity. The build alternatives would include improvements to Wilson Park. During construction, the contractor could use a 0.12-acre portion of this 2.1-acre park, which is adjacent to and beneath the I-81 viaduct, for construction staging. To protect the public during construction, NYSDOT would close the sidewalk, as well as an adjacent piece of parkland, and provide a temporary walkway with adequate space and protection from construction. NYSDOT will require the contractor to secure access to the restricted area to protect public safety. The park currently has 2 basketball courts, and 2 courts will be maintained during construction. After construction, the park would have 3 courts, benches, new shade trees, a new water fountain in the basketball court area, new pavement for access from Jackson Street, and new fences, a graded and reseeded lawn area, pedestrian gates, and parking improvements. These improvements were developed in coordination with the city and the Parks Department, as well as Syracuse Housing Authority. The community grid would reconstruct portions of I-481, which would be designated as the new I-81 and brought up to current interstate design standards. Improvements include adding lanes where needed between I-690 and I-90. The new northbound I-81 would be expanded from 2 to 3 lanes. Between Kirkville Road and I-690, the new southbound I-81 would be expanded from 2 to 3 lanes. The project would also reconfigure the southern and northern interchanges with I-81 and make various improvements to Interchange 3 and New York State Routes 5 and 92. The Interchange 3 improvements were developed as a result of public comments, as was the new design for the southern interchange. Neither build alternative would adversely affect air quality. NYSDOT is proposing to construct 15 noise barriers under either build alternative to abate traffic noise impacts. By removing the viaduct, the community grid alternative would allow daylighting of areas that are currently cast in shadows and would create extended views to surrounding areas, resulting in beneficial visual effects. The community grid alternative's impacts to wetlands and other habitats would be mitigated through measures such as stream, culvert, and floodplain restoration. The community grid alternative would also address climate change with the construction of a new storm sewer trunk line, which would provide increased capacity for stormwater and reduce the load on the city's combined sewer system. The community grid alternative would require acquisition of 4 commercial buildings. No residential or historic buildings would be acquired. The viaduct alternative would require the acquisition of 24 commercial and residential buildings, including 11 historic buildings. The beneficial and adverse effects of the project would be fairly distributed within the affected environmental justice and non-environmental justice communities. FHWA and NYSDOT conducted a detailed economic study to investigate the potential effects on businesses of traffic rerouting under the community grid alternative. The study found that changes in traffic under the community grid alternative would have only a small effect on highway-dependent businesses along I-81 north of downtown Syracuse. Many of these businesses, like Destiny USA and hotels, are somewhat resilient to changes in traffic because they are planned destinations for travelers rather than spontaneous stops along the way. The study also found that differences in travel times would not substantively alter local consumer behavior. The community grid would result in approximately 10 to 12 point acres of surplus property, depending on how much land would be needed to accommodate the highway, sidewalk, shared use, bicycle and pedestrian path, and other transportation features. NYSDOT will determine the size and location of the surplus transportation right-of-way parcels once construction is complete. NYSDOT will form a land use working group consisting of representatives from the city school district, economic development and economic opportunity organizations, the business community, environmental justice communities, neighborhood residents, and other organizations and stakeholders as appropriate to provide input to NYSDOT in establishing a framework for the non-transportation use of each potential surplus parcel. The viaduct alternative would not result in surplus property. Construction of the viaduct alternative would take 6 years and would cost $2.2 billion, whereas the community grid alternative would take 5 years and would cost $1.9 billion. To mitigate the adverse effects of construction activities on the community, NYSDOT will require its contractors to comply with measures to minimize or otherwise mitigate effects. These measures will address traffic diversions, dust and debris, increase in emissions and noise, and access to businesses and residences. There will be community engagement throughout construction. Together, these measures would help reduce adverse effects during the construction period. The community grid alternative would require the acquisition of 4 commercial buildings, as well as portions of land from approximately 140 commercial and residential properties. The majority of property acquisitions would be within the city of Syracuse, with the remaining acquisitions occurring in the towns of Cicero and DeWitt. NYSDOT's Office of Right-of-Way would acquire real estate needed for the project in accordance with the eminent domain procedure law. The acquisition process will follow 5 steps, which include 1. Contacting the property owner to schedule a property inspection at the owner's convenience. During the property inspection, the department will provide the owner with a copy of the acquisition map, informational packets, and encourage owner involvement. 2. Appraising the property to determine just compensation due to the property owner. 3. Making an offer of compensation of the fully approved value, either in person or by certified mail. 4. Legally acquiring the property, which occurs once the acquisition map is filed with the county clerk's office. And 5. Paying the property owner. If a property acquisition requires relocation of businesses or residences, NYSDOT's Office of Right-of-Way will work with the occupants to make their relocation as accommodating as practical. The Relocation Assistance Program includes moving and reestablishment expenses or a payment in lieu of moving expenses. To be eligible for relocation benefits, owners must complete negotiations with the Office of Right-of-Way prior to moving. No site occupants will be required to move without at least 90 days written notice. Informational booklets on the property acquisition and relocation processes, including contact information should you have questions, are available at the project's virtual information room and at the in-person meeting at the ON Center. Identifying the job skills needed on large projects like I-81 and providing the job readiness and training for those jobs is ongoing. NYSDOT's goal is to have a local workforce ready to work when the project starts. NYSDOT has partnered with the New York State Department of Labor to create the Workforce Forward Syracuse program. This program would help train and connect local workers with the jobs that would be involved with the I-81 project. NYSDOT has a program running at SUNY Educational Opportunity Center, EOC, called Work Smart New York that helps give local residents the skills they need to work on DOT construction projects. We also have been collaborating with the City of Syracuse and Syracuse Build on the new Pathways to Apprenticeship in an effort to give local residents training in construction skills. NYSDOT continues to work with the community to develop a local hiring goal through the FHWA SEP-14 application. This application would ensure that members of the local community have the greatest opportunity to work directly on the I-81 project. We will have both virtual and in-person hearings where individuals can provide oral comments. Both hearings will be live-streamed on the project's YouTube page. The virtual hearing will take place on August 17th at 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. EDT. Attendees of the virtual hearing can request to submit oral comments when they register for the hearing via Zoom. The in-person hearing will take place on August 18th at the On Center from 3:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Attendees of the in-person hearing can provide oral comments to the audience or dictate them privately to a stenographer. You may also submit your comments in writing via the project website, www.i81opportunities.org, or by writing to us via regular mail. In addition, you may call our project hotline and leave your comment as a voice message. Please note that all comments received, whether orally or in writing, electronically, or in person, will be given an equal level of consideration. We want to emphasize the importance of the public's feedback and encourage you to submit your comments and questions. We look forward to hearing from you. To learn more about the alternatives and the project effects, please visit our virtual information room. The room contains display boards, presentations, and videos about the project. Thank you for watching this presentation, and please continue to participate in the I-81 Viaduct project.
I will now introduce representatives of the New York State DOT and the Federal Highway Administration who will be in attendance for today's hearing. To my left, this is Mark Frechette. He's the project director for the Department of Transportation. Rick Marquis is en route, so you'll see him walk up on the stage here in just a little while. Rick Marquis is the division administrator for the Federal Highway Administration. My role here as the hearing moderator is to provide members of the public an opportunity to provide comments in an organized, fair, professional, and orderly manner. The testimony is being recorded, I mentioned before, by the stenographer in front of me. In order to help her out, please spell your name, state and spell your name before you begin speaking, and identify any organization that you represent. That's not going to be counted against your time. I'll start the timer after you're done with that. To ensure that everyone's heard, we need comments to be limited to 3 minutes after you introduce yourself. I will provide a verbal warning when 30 seconds remain so that you know that your time is almost up. Agency representatives will not be answering questions or responding to comments during this hearing. Responses to substantive comments will be included in the FDR/FEIS. So that's where the responses to your questions will be. I want to remind you that if you wish to make an oral statement, you must fill out one of these speaker cards at the registration desk or the welcome table behind those doors to the rear. Before beginning the comment period, I'd like to recognize elected officials or the representatives who are in attendance. The mayor of the city of Syracuse, the Honorable Ben Walsh, is here. New York State Senate District 53, our Senator, the Honorable Rachel May, is here. Onondaga County Legislator for the 5th District, the Honorable Deborah J. Cody. Town Town of Salina Supervisor, the Honorable Colleen A. Gunn, and the Village of Fayetteville Mayor, the Honorable Mark Olson. The elected officials will speak first, and then we'll go through the cards of everyone who is requested to speak during this hearing. So at this time, I'd like to hear from those who wish to make oral statements in accordance with agency policy. Elected and appointed officials will be given the first opportunity to speak. Others will be called to make their statements in the order they are registered. I'm going to call 2 people at a time so that you can line up behind the microphone there and know in advance when it's almost your turn to speak. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce anybody's name. Our first speaker will be Rachel May, New York State Senator, and she'll be followed by Deb Cody.
Thank you. Thank you for holding this important event. I want to echo the many voices that have spoken up in support of the community grid. And I also am in favor of moving expeditiously. I know a number of people have asked for further delays, but this long, drawn-out process has contributed to divisions in our community, and we need to start healing. So I hope that we can move forward with a plan soon. I do want to encourage everyone who feels they don't have enough information to take advantage of the 8 neighborhood meetings coming up in the next few weeks. I want to start by agreeing with someone who spoke yesterday, a representative from the Destiny Mall, who said that there is a real threat of creating the equivalent of a major highway at grade level with this proposal. I disagree with him that this means entertaining an entirely different option. It should be possible to do traffic calming with narrower lanes and an overall narrower profile to the business loop road. I was listening carefully to the definition of a business loop. There's nothing in that definition that says it has to be as wide as the proposal currently for Almond Street, and I hope you'll consider a narrower profile there. I also echo the many concerns about where the off-ramp is coming from the south and the roundabout in such close proximity to a school in an environmental justice community. I have a bill in the state legislature to prevent major roadways from being built this close to schools because of the environmental harms, the safety concerns, and the degraded quality of life that come with such roadways. One concern I want to add to this, many that have been voiced but that I haven't heard so far, is that the traffic circle as proposed would not only send traffic north along the east side of the school, but west as well, and it would make Martin Luther King East a more heavily trafficked road, causing traffic dangers to children leaving the school. My suggestion is to locate the off-ramp farther south and the traffic circle farther south. A circle at Brighton Avenue, for example, where there is ample space, far from residences, would allow traffic to disperse to the west, east, and south on relatively large roads, which could vastly reduce the amount of traffic passing by Dr. King's school. The results of the 2020 census tell us that Syracuse has once again become the engine of population growth for central New York. The growth in our urban population is driven by Black, Latino, and Asian American populations and by millennials. These are demographic groups that expect and deserve livable neighborhoods, complete streets, and good public transportation. The grid, as long as it is modified with the goals that have been brought forward, is clearly the best option to serve these needs and promote further growth in Syracuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next to speak is Deb Cody, County Legislator. Deb Cody will be followed by Ben Walsh, Mayor.
Hi, thank you. My message is really short and very simple. I represent the towns of Salina, Cicero, and DeWitt. I feel that all of our town officials from all 3 of those towns have done a great job outlining concerns in all of those towns, whether it's the businesses being affected in Salina, the tax base in Salina, the northern towns in Cicero, different issues in DeWitt with the congestion. And since I feel like I'm the only county legislator here for today, I'll also mention the other towns, how virtually almost every town supervisor in the county has also come out with very real concerns about this plan. I don't want to be, redundant in repeating everything that's been said, especially for the town of Salina. But I would just say that with such a massive document coming out, and that it may be some more time to go over those details, and for the towns to come up with their own studies outlining their concerns that that they can document. So, thank you.
Is Mayor of the City of Syracuse, Ben Walsh. Mayor Walsh will be followed by Alan Hudson.
Good afternoon, Mayor Ben Walsh, B-E-N-W-A-L-S-H, Mayor of the great and growing city of Syracuse. I'm going to repeat the comments that I shared at yesterday's virtual public hearing. The community grid is the right alternative for Syracuse, Central New York, and all of New York State. While there are still elements of the project that must be improved, that fact remains clear. I want to thank the DOT for thoroughly studying the options for this project. With the community grid, the DOT is seizing the transformational moment before us and creating the best framework to correct the historical wrongs that hurt city residents. I also want to thank the DOT for addressing the comments and concerns it has received during this process. That work of listening and responding must continue. My team and I are reviewing the DEIS. We are talking with key stakeholders, attending community meetings, and working with the DOT. We will file detailed written comments as part of this process. Today, let me cover 4 points. First, my greatest concern has been and continues to be for the people who live closest to the viaduct. They have borne the biggest burden, and their neighborhoods must be protected and invested in. I'm concerned about the current design and position of the roundabout at Steam at Dr. King's School. We cannot put our children at risk for decades to come. I request that you listen to the concerns on this critical element of the project and present alternative solutions in the final environmental impact statement. The roundabout is one key concern, but not the only one. The DOT must deliver a comprehensive approach that addresses pedestrian, bicycle, public transit, and parks amenities. Mitigating health and construction impacts are critically important. As I noted earlier, the city will provide written comments on other areas of concern regarding the project impact on city neighborhoods. Second, I appreciate the DOT's inclusion of a land use working group for surplus land that will become available as a result of the project. This group must include the city, the school district, neighborhood representatives, environmental justice communities, economic opportunity and development organizations, and other stakeholders. Land use is a priority concern for the city and its residents, so there must be local control of decision-making regarding surplus land. Third, I challenge the state to aim high on local hiring. The city and DOT has worked well together in planning to ensure city residents, especially women, people of color, and veterans, get equitable opportunities for jobs and careers from the project. The most critical stages are happening now, and I urge the state to set aggressive goals in its application to the Federal Highway Administration for local hiring and commit to even more aggressive programs to train and prepare city workers. Fourth, I commend the DOT for addressing concerns of our suburban neighbors, including through the economic analysis of the northern suburbs and the proposed improvements to Exit 3 on Interstate 481 and Linden Corners to the east. I urge you to continue to address these concerns, especially to the north and south of the city, where we have the opportunity to reduce traffic problems that have long concerned these communities. In closing, we know the pandemic continues to create uncertainty. The DOT set up a process to ensure everyone can participate. To my fellow city residents in all of Central New York, please ensure you are heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Walsh. Next to speak is Helen Hudson from the city of Syracuse. She's the president of the Common Council. Following Ms. Hudson, we'll be calling Gunn, town of Salina.
Thank you. And I'm not going to reiterate on the things that's been said already. I want to come at it from another angle. First, I want to talk about the human capital. You all know, I know you heard last Saturday about the high rates of respiratory problems and asthma from that quarter. So my suggestion in my little mind is that New York State and DOT set up a fund to ensure that these people that have been in this shadow of this viaduct can get medical services as needed. Then I want to talk about returning the land. That was prime property. We had businesses under that land. There were homeowners under that land. So when you think about the prime real estate that's going to become available, think about the citizens and the community that it was taken from in the beginning. And then I want to lastly say, open up the entrance to Oakwood Cemetery. That was a beautiful, beautiful parkway that people used to go to. People used to have picnics there. So open up the entrance to Oakwood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. Next to speak is Colleen Bennett, Town of Salina, Town Supervisor, followed by Courtney Alexander, Town of Skaneateles, Deputy Supervisor.
Thank you. Colleen got up from the Town of Salina. The Town of Salina has 3 exits from I-81, where we have over 41 restaurants, 9 gas stations, and 15 hotels. The economic impact study that was included in the draft environmental impact statement did not take into account sitting down with these businesses to put together the analysis. Therefore, we are asking for an extension of the comment period so the businesses in our community can review the over 28,000 pages of the draft environmental impact statement to be able to submit comments. We reserve the right to be able to submit written comments past September 14th. In light of the change with the governor, we feel that it's an adequate request to ask for an extension. The Town of Salina will see a 50% decrease in assessed evaluation as a result of the change of the traffic patterns without having through traffic any longer come through. We will also lose over $4.7 million in town, county, and school taxes, $2.2 million in state and federal fuel taxes, $3.3 million in state sales taxes, and $440,000 in Onondaga County room occupancy tax. All of these loss of revenue will affect the Town of Salina and all the residents in the county, including the city of Syracuse. So again, we request that you extend the comment period so we have additional time to submit and prepare written comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gunn. Next to speak is Deputy Supervisor of the Town of Skaneateles, Courtney Alexander. Ms. Alexander will be followed by Mayor Mark Olson from the Village of Fayetteville.
Thank you. I'm here today to talk about several things that other elected officials brought up, but none of them were brought up relevant to our towns and the surrounding areas in the outskirts of Syracuse. The DEIS, children's safety, those are all concerns that we have in the town of Skaneateles. We believe that the project area for the DEIS needs to be expanded to include areas south of the city of Syracuse. This should be expanded at least to the Homer-Cortland exit. This area has not been properly evaluated to determine travel times using the new Interstate 81, the former Route 481, versus travel times entering and exiting Interstate 81 off of Syracuse to reach the thruway south of Syracuse to reach the thruway west of Syracuse. The grid option forces trucks to go east before they can go west, in turn increasing travel times. As we all know, in the trucking business, people are looking to get there faster and the shortest way they can. We have a major concern because we have increased truck traffic exiting 81 at Homer, creating a safety issue for people that live on 41 and 41A in the town of Skaneateles. There's lots of families and children that live there, and we have some serious concerns with the trucks when they come flying down these roads that were simply not made to handle this kind of truck traffic. Our concern is the impact of increased interstate trucks entering and exiting this area. I'll also note that Skaneateles Lake is the provider of unfiltered drinking water for over 200,000 people in Syracuse, Skaneateles, and many surrounding areas. The truck traffic on these roads, we've seen many of them flip over. A lot of them are heading to the Seneca Falls landfill, which also is problematic because there's waste coming in this area as well. So we really seek mitigation of this problem as it exists now. And we would really like you to expand the DEIS to include these areas so that we can mitigate these problems as we move forward. We hope you hear our concerns and can address them accordingly as we move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Next to speak is Mayor Mark Olson from the Village of Fayetteville, who will be followed by William Simmons.
Good evening. It's Mark Olson, M-A-R-K-O-L-S-O-N, Mayor of the Village of Fayetteville and President of the Onondaga County Mayors Association. I want to thank the board and the panel here today for allowing us to say a few words. As an affected community, not directly but indirectly, I'm pleased to see some of the upgrades that have happened at the 3E and 3W exit, but I don't think they've gone far enough. If you look at the traffic patterns that I just reviewed with Betsy Parmley downstairs, which I want to say thank you, that was well done downstairs, and I appreciate the time with them, it doesn't go far enough. You talked about, Senator May talked about earlier, divisions in the community and what happened when we put it where we put it 56 years ago. You're doing the same thing again with other communities, and I don't think anybody that is affected by it now wants anybody to be affected by it in the future. So I'd like you to take it a little bit farther. The city has done a great job of interacting with the DOT and everybody at the state. That needs to be done at the local level. We've had one meeting with the DOT as all the town supervisors and mayors. One. That's not enough. No communication and not enough meetings. We have a new governor coming in. I want to hear what the new governor has to say. Kathy Hochul has her hands full, and this is a huge project that will affect us for many, many years. The new governor also comes from local government, so understands local government. Mayors, town supervisors understand public infrastructure. We deal with it every day. We're dealing with it right now with flooding. A lot of us have to leave because we know there's 2 inches of rain coming, and we have a lot to do in our communities. So we understand public infrastructure, and we understand what happens. All I'm asking for is a little more time to have the governor review this, the new governor review it, and to give us a little more time to have some open dialogue, because there's concerns. Can they be addressed? Absolutely. Can they be fixed? Absolutely. 481 and 3E is a big intersection. When they talk about the upgrades, one side was done very well, nothing happened on the other side, so I'd like to see some more on that. Mitigation money put aside in case something happens that wasn't foreseen. And what is happening in the world right now when you hear about, well, we weren't expecting that to happen. This could happen, something could happen that we weren't planning on. Downstairs there's boards that say A, B, C, D, and when you grade the intersections. In Fayetteville we have 2 Fs now. If you add more traffic or something happens, you can't go any lower than an F. And what happens? Everybody's quality of life in our community will be affected. We don't want anybody's life in the city, the suburbs, anywhere in Onondaga County's life to be affected. But we certainly don't want this project to affect something. When we can plan for it, we can look at it, or we can put money aside to be able to have a future reference to take care of that. I think a little bit more time, 30 days, 60 days, anything we can do to give us a little more time. This is a big document. We're going through a similar process with a brownfield right now, and it's a third the size of this, but we were asking for a little bit more time. So if there's anything you can do. And the last thing I want to talk about is you rode along with Andrew Donovan, the esteemed Andrew Donovan. I thought that was a great thing. I want you in an ambulance, and I want you to come as the 5th busiest ambulance in Onondaga County, the Village of Fayetteville. We transport over 3,000 patients a year. I want you to see what it's like. 3 of the major hospitals that we go to, Upstate, Crouse, and Community, or the VA, are off. We come off of 481 to get on 81 and down. I want you just to see what it's like. I think it's important. Those people's lives are in our hands when we transport those. We were in an accident 2 weeks ago in the city. Someone hit the back of our ambulance while we were responding. We had a serious patient. We had to leave the accident scene to get that patient to the hospital. Every second counts. So when you say it's not going to be affected, I want to make sure that doesn't affect the people that we transport and that we take care of it in our ambulance service. And I want to close by saying thank you. I think this is great. I want to see more of these. I think when any chance that anybody in our county has a chance to say their feelings and let their facts be known, I think it's important. Thank you so much.
William Simmons, the Syracuse Housing Authority, followed by Paul Conley.
Good evening. That's William, W-I-L-L-I-A-M, Simmons, S-I-M-M-O-N-S, Syracuse Housing Authority. I want to thank the federal and state government for today's hearing on the draft NEIS statement. And while the Syracuse Housing Authority supports the New York State grid option for the Housing Authority, we do have some concerns as it relates to environmental justice and the health of the residents in the neighborhood. We currently have approximately 500 residents who live adjacent in pioneer homes adjacent to the viaduct, and approximately 300 residents who live in Toomey Abbott Towers. The New York State Draft Environmental Impact Statement on Table 4.7 relates to measures and minimizing community impacts, and it does an adequate job as it assessing the critical technical assessing the needs to be covered through the deconstruction and construction of the project. However, it does not address how to help residents with the health impacts that they may occur through the project. Through recent meetings with residents, comments made during door-to-door visits, and other comments received, SHA has drafted the following comments for protecting the health and well-being of SHA residents during the I-81 Viaduct project. I have a quick list here, but with supporting greater details that I'll be submitting for the record. But we're primarily concerned with, one, the physical health of residents, having the ability to have a health clinic that they can respond to during, before, and during, after the construction project, access to mental health services, air quality monitoring and abatement real time, in addition to some of the minimum proposals that you have currently, sound monitoring and abatement, greater opportunity for residents to help monitor those opportunities, and some of the abatement measures that we've outlined for residents in Toomey Abbott Towers and Pioneer Homes, and an environmental healthy registry. Again, just making sure that the respiratory care of residents pre, post, and after are able to be addressed. And then we would also like to have voluntary housing vouchers for those residents who may voluntarily want to be off the footprint during this process. This is a highly stressful endeavor that many of the residents will be going through, and the ability to address all of those physical and mental health concerns is going to be critical as we go forward. But we again want to thank the DOT, federal and state, for choosing the community grid option and all of the adjustments that you made over the years to lower the traffic impacts through that neighborhood. And so we want to thank you again for all of your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Speaking next is Paul Condon, followed by Kathy Strickland.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for this platform here. My statement is short. You'll never convince me that the primary reason for the grid alternative is nothing other than an attempt to right a 60-year-old social justice wrong. Rebuild Interstate 81 Viaduct so interstate and international travelers alike can see and experience for themselves our special city, university, skyline, and robust modern medical facilities. I yield my time. Thank you.
Next is Kathy Stribley, and following Stribley will be America Trier.
Kathy Stribley, K-A-T-H-Y-S-T-R-I-B-L-E-Y. I'm representing my neighborhood in the Valley. I just want to make a general comment that the DEIS does not recognize that the Valley adjoins the 81-481 interchange to the west, and I can't find it in there anywhere. So I'm just bringing that up, that those are different socioeconomic areas. They mention Outer Comstock, they don't mention the Valley. North Valley is a much lower income, much more older, elderly population. I had previously submitted 2 other issues one of which was responded to, but I don't believe it was very clearly responded to, which is that the lower interchange at East Glen Avenue is connected to a private site, Loretto Geriatric Center site, and that we on the valley to the west will not be able to access that site if Loretto decides to close that bridge. So that whole entire interchange can only be accessed by traveling south to Seneca Turnpike and then back north again on Brighton Avenue to get to that interchange to the, back to that system, to BL 81. So I live right downhill of the 481 interchange, and in our neighborhood we have a brook called City Line Brook. Its watershed is underneath the 481 interchange. In the DEIS, it is noted as being undergrounded or piped underground, but it is not piped underground. It flows through carbonate fractures, bedrock, below the 481 area and down into the valley, as does all the stormwater from 481 and 81. None of the water that it comes off the highway there actually ends up in the ditches. It all ends up down in the valley. Because it is not contained up there, I've had DOT people tell me they lose the stormwater from that area. But my major concern is that this brook, City Line Brook, has not been identified as an above ground resource, and around this brook and the springs which emanate below Loretto are natural environments that are relatively rare and they need to be considered. I just want to make the point, I'm in favor of the community grid option. I believe it's the best for the city. I just want this information to be recognized and have the impacts mitigated from the stormwater and the possible disturbance of this area. Thank you.
Next to speak is America Trier of the Downtown Committee of Syracuse, followed by, I don't have the name on this card, so I'm going to begin your email address, MACUNN. I'll stop there. You can identify yourself that way. You're next.
Hi, my name is Merika Trier, Meriketreier, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Downtown Committee of Syracuse. First, I'd like to thank the New York State DOT for the information that has been released to date and for the way it has continued to listen to community members to enhance the design work to reflect a transportation solution to best serve our community. Our mission at the Downtown Committee of Syracuse is downtown's revitalization. Every day, we work to foster a vibrant, active, attractive, welcoming, and inclusive city center. We support the community grid because it's the best solution to continue downtown's forward trajectory. The grid creates opportunities to move people into our city center, provides more economic opportunity and jobs, and leads to further investment in property and new tax resources. More than $800 million of investment has been invested here in downtown Syracuse since 2010, reflecting the work of dozens of developers, builders, and investors who believe in a strong urban core, not to mention the hundreds of small businesses and thousands of residents that now call downtown Syracuse home. The community grid also involves the least disruptive construction approach, displaces the fewest amount of businesses and residents, and preserves historic structures. More than a decade of studies and public meetings have generated significant information and feedback to lead the New York State DOT to recommend the community grid. We urge you to maintain the established time frame to keep this project moving forward. In the presentation, I was encouraged to see how land will be returned to the community. We ask you to look to local oversight for the land use working group. Successful community planning can only happen if it's being done with the community and not for the community. As you have been doing, we encourage you to continue looking at the design of the Almond Street corridor and ability to reduce the right-of-way for vehicles to provide the maximum amount of land for redevelopment activity along this corridor. The design should allow for the building on each side of the street, produce a safe, walkable environment for residents, and enhance our community's character with sound aesthetic design. We ask you to continue working with Centro and other community partners to improve mass transit options with bus service, scheduling, and BRT. We ask you to please keep construction phasing in mind. The phased approach and shorter construction time period presented with the community grid is beneficial for residents and businesses. We encourage you to continue finding ways to minimize disruption and identify parking solutions for construction workers during this time period. We ask that you work closely with the city, the downtown committee, and others to ensure a regular flow of information so we can coordinate to keep businesses, property owners, and residents well informed about what's happening next. Finally, long-term maintenance of any new space is important. NYSDOT needs to develop a mutual agreement or plan for caring for any investment made as part of the streetscape along with a dedicated funding source. We will submit more detailed written comments by September 14th, and we thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Name and spell it for the stenographer. The next speaker will be James Majesto.
My name is Mary Cunningham, Cunningham. As I've looked at or listened to and looked at some of the plans for what we are calling a business loop, it seems, oops, thank you, I'm short. It seems like we need to change the classification of the road that's going to be Almond Street. One of the things that it is now called is a business loop. There are parts of it that are 50 miles an hour. Much of it is in city neighborhoods, and that must slow down. And one of the ways to slow those down, as people have said, is we need to change not only to less lanes, but to narrower lanes. There should be 11-foot lanes. And we need to slow that down through these neighborhoods because the DOT is part of our government. And as we listen to our mayor and Rachel May, your job is not just to get traffic through there as fast as possible. You're a part of what government is, which is to ensure the health, welfare, and life quality of the people who live around these roads and near these roads. And so your job is to really listen to what is it that will increase the quality of life here. In the mid-1960s, as people have said, we made decisions that destroyed the 15th, 18th, and 19th wards. And we need to bring our city back together. And as we often say, we all do better when we all do better. We cannot repeat what was done on the south side. Steam MLK has the highest rate of asthma in the city and in the county. And there is no reason for us to continue that pollution that goes through, that is around the building, through the building, in the building. The fifth grade there, in the past, has had to close the windows because the noise and the air coming in. And we cannot continue to pollute a whole school full of children. There is no need for the roundabout to be there. As Rachel May said, move it south. It can go to Brighton Ave. Move it north, it can, or whatever direction it is, it can go up to West Street and Fayette, where it's in an industrial and commercial area, not in a residence, not near a school. Our city thrives when it's made up of neighborhoods, and it's really important for us to remember that we want to not make barriers. The roundabout is a barrier. You can't cross that street. You can't get into that land. So that we really need to recognize that we need to support having all the essentials in our neighborhoods, which are grocery stores, pharmacies, coffee shops, houses. The rebuild of Almond Street must be a viable, healthy neighborhood, and it cannot be a business loop. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. Next to speak is James Majesto, followed by Kathy Downing.
Thank you. My name is James Majesto, M-E-G-G-E-S-T-O. I want to speak to you about a rather focused issue. I've listened to many of the speakers, and I understand the scope of the project, but I'd like to call to the attention that the fact that it is made up of a number of very small individual parts, one of which is a commercial establishment on the corner of Krause and Erie Boulevard, CAS Industries, which does business as the art store. And in looking at the plan as it is implemented currently would take away substantially all of the parking in front of the store, rendering it unusable. And the fact is we would not have an entrance. The underpass that you propose is going to move and expand the bridge. And this portion of the parking lot would be lost, which would not be feasible for the entrance to this store. So we ask that you reconsider your plan so that it properly addresses how we would get our customers in the store. Also, we have a concern about the grid would minimize our ability to bring tractor trailers for supplies in and for shipping out. This business is on the verge of expanding. We are in the process of negotiating space for 35 additional employees beyond the employees that we have currently. But if this plan, as it is implemented, would severely impact this small business and its ability to expand. So without a reconsideration of how that taking of our parking lot and closing off our entrance, we need to have that re-examined. Or in the alternative, you need to take the entirety of our building and move us to another location at adequate compensation. Otherwise, we're going to lose jobs and we're going to lose a small business that is the engine for our community. And I don't think that that was the purpose in this particular plan. So I would ask you to please reconsider that issue. And we've invited members of the Department of Transportation to come on site, bring their sidewalk chalk, and tell us where they intend to do this and how they intend to improve this small aspect of your project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Modesto. For the record, Mr. Modesto, before you leave, can you state the address of that impacted property for us?
The art store is at 935 Erie Boulevard.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker will be Kathy Downing, followed by Lanessa Owen Chaplin. I don't see Kathy Downing around, so I'll recall her in a moment. Is Lanessa Owen Chaplin ready to speak?
Hi, my name is Lanessa Owens Chaplin. That's Lanessa Owens, OWENS-CHAPLIN. I originally I changed my strategy here when I'm talking, so I'm going to say some few things I didn't plan. I'm submitting this comment on behalf of the New York Civil Liberties Union as lead project counsel. The NYCLU is a nonpartisan, non-for-profit organization. We have 11 offices across the state. We have 120 employees, and we have 180,000 members that support our organization. Additionally, I am submitting this comment on behalf of myself. I am a Syracuse native and a Southside resident. My area of expertise and experience as an attorney for the past 8 years in this community, I have worked with the New York State Assembly for 5 years on campaigns such as anti-poverty initiatives, criminal justice reform, anti-discrimination, and most recently environmental law, where my specialty is environmental justice. For the past 4 years, the NYCLU has canvassed this community that's impacted by the highway adjacent to the viaduct. We've knocked on doors. We've held over 100 meetings. We spoke to over thousands of people. These boxes here is a representation of over 4,000 comments that we submitted from residents who live in that area. While I plan to submit a more comprehensive, detailed comment in writing to address some of the minor issues I have with the community grid, I want to unequivocally say the viaduct must be removed from this community. For decades, the state and federal agencies have encouraged environmental toxins such as highways to be placed in low-income communities and black and brown communities. The viaduct is a physical representation of that behavior. It has contributed to the poor economy in that community, the poor health in that community, and it has also lowered property values and also put children's lives in danger. The community that lives along the viaduct has suffered real consequences from the convenience of travel times, ease of access to generally white suburban communities, a practice not unique to Syracuse. Nationally, black and brown communities are breathing in more air pollution at higher rates than any of their white counterparts. This is what we call environmental racism. And the community grid is the first step in ending that practice. It is also not lost on me that a community overburdened with air pollution from the viaduct, the steam plant, that heats and hot water, Syracuse University, National Grid's power grid, and several brownfields also had some of the highest cases of COVID-19 in the past 2 years. Is this going to be a repeat of the 1950s, where a few people with money, lobbyists, organizations, and attorneys are making the decisions to maintain segregation in this community?
30 seconds.
No one is entitled to a practical route or the best route to their job. That is not an inherent right. An inherent right is for children to breathe clean air and get that viaduct out of their community. The plan is simple. And all those folks who are saying you have not been heard, you've been heard. You were heard when you hired Trump's administration to come and lobby for the tunnel. You were heard when you just recently hired the Federal Highway Administration's former attorney for a new option. You were heard when you delayed the project by another 2 years for another tunnel study that's already been completed. You've been heard for the past 10 years. Being heard and being agreed with are two different things. We do not agree with you. Plain and simple, on this issue, you are wrong. That viaduct has got to go.
Thank you, Ms. Chaplin. Next to speak is Jeffrey, I think it says Lima, followed by Peter Sarver. I have Jeffrey Lima, followed by Peter Sarver. Mr. Sarver, if you're ready, you can go. I'll recall Jeffrey Lima. It appears to be L-E-M-A, but the handwriting's difficult, so it's close to that. Come, let me know. Go ahead, Mr. Sarver.
So I am Peter Sarver. Sarver is spelled S-A-R-V-E-R, and I'm the convener for the Moving People Transportation Coalition. I'm also a board member for the Alliance of Communities Transforming Syracuse, known as ACTS, our Community Social Justice Interfaith Network. Moving People is an umbrella group with more than 20 community organizations and many hundreds of individuals supporting a people-centered rather than auto-centered regional transportation system. We've been involved for more than 8 years in the I-81 replacement process. We've held many public forums throughout the community and provided advice to the DOT. We oppose any further delays in the public comment period for the DEIS. Everyone has had more than enough time to express their viewpoints. There is now a community consensus that the community grid is the way to go. Does everyone agree with every aspect of the proposed project? Of course not. We want to commend the New York State DOT for their expertise and their vision in helping to recreate our area-wide highway system. We also want to commend NYS DOT for their advocacy of jobs for local residents in this huge infrastructure project. Moving People have been part of the Urban Jobs Task Force for several years and strongly endorse their recommendations. As Mayor Ben Walsh has said, we should aim high for our goals of local training and hiring. On a personal note, I just want to mention that I take offense when comments are made for unfounded scare tactics, such as polluting the water supply of Syracuse by representatives from the privileged area of Skaneateles. I just don't believe that type of comment is in order. Thank you.
Next to speak is David Rufus, followed by James Ash Yarbrough.
Good evening. My name is David Rufus, D-A-V-I-D-R-U-F-U-S. Good evening, and thank you for having us here this evening. I think it's vitally important that we recognize the DOT for being available and willing to hear the people. I want to just start by saying that one thing that we've forgotten is that they say that the people haven't heard about this, the people don't know about this, the people aren't aware of this. I want to shoot that down. For one thing, the community is well aware of what's going on. We've met every Tuesday for the last 2 years. We meet every Thursday. We door-to-door, and we canvass on Wednesdays, and we talk on Saturdays. I am a part of an organizing team from the NYCLU, New York Civil Liberties, but I'm also a 60-year resident of Syracuse, and I live on Martin Luther King. The roundabout is something that's going to hurt this community, but I would challenge the DOT to think about putting a little heart in this process. There's numbers and numbers and numbers of people living in this community that have invested their lives here. We've lived here, we've learned here, we've loved here, and we might have to leave here. But if the DOT doesn't take the time to read and put together a study that talks about the conditions that we've lived under, the things that we've breathed in, the things that we've taken in over the years, if the DOT doesn't stop and take time to really look at the fact that if they put a roundabout right there at Dr. King School, in the heart of a community that I lived in for 50 years, I'm a resident of this community. I work in this community, I live in this community, and I love this community. But I think that you have to take that side of this process and respect those people that live there and give this project some human. Put some humanity to the project. There's also the issue and the concern that people don't know what's going to happen for them. We're talking to people all the time. But there's a genuine concern that if I have to move, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? There'll be people out there that say, we got that. But that doesn't help the health of the people. There again becomes an issue that is hurting the folks. We need to work on DOTs becoming aware of the fact that people need to be treated like people. We need some heart as well as head in this process. Most of you are engineers and technically advanced in this stuff that understands this process, but we need the jobs. We need the clean air. We need the opportunity. So I challenge the DOT to take this report that they've written that we're now having to read and spend some time making sure that our people that live in that community, in the footprint that lives under that 1.4 miles of viaduct, are given the best possible chances of having some success from this process. We lost 60 years ago. We don't want to lose again. We lost 60 years ago. We're not going to lose again. We would challenge the DOT to take care of our people, take care of our heart. We need a place to leave our memories. We need a place to hold our hearts, our memories, and our thoughts. So we're looking for the DOT to take care of that stuff for us. Thank you.
The next speaker, thank you, Mr. Rufus. The next speaker is James Ash Yarbrough, followed by Dylan Reed.
Sorry, I'm also short. My name is James Ash Yarbrough, Jamesashyarbrough. I'm here speaking today as a resident of the city of Syracuse. I'm deeply devastated to know the initial building of I-81 displaced almost all of the city's black residents and entrenched poverty, pollution, and the complete destruction of the vibrant 15th Ward. To acknowledge and repair these past wrongs, I'm urging the New York State Department of Transportation to move forward with the community grid plan, as well as ensure the highest possible percentage of construction work hours for this project be reserved specifically for Syracuse residents under SEP 14, with at least 30% of jobs going to Black and brown residents of Syracuse. This endeavor should also include legally binding goals, monitoring, and enforcement by way of an independent compliance officer, and the implementation of a community workforce agreement, project labor agreement. Further, a land transfer policy must be put in place that restores and enhances communities impacted by I-81, specifically the predominantly Black community adjacent to the viaduct, before returning the land to the city of Syracuse. These are only a few concerns of many I have for demanding racial, environmental, and economic justice through the I-81 rebuild. Thus, I stand in full support and solidarity with all comments made by the New York Civil Liberties Union, as well as the Urban Jobs Task Force. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Yarbrough. Next to speak is Dylan Reed, who will be followed by David Blaylock.
My name is Dylan Reed, D-I-L-L-O-N-R-E-E-D, and I'm here in support of the Urban Jobs Task Force and the New York Civil Liberties Union. As a citizen of the city with the highest levels of poverty among Blacks and Latinos in the nation, I strongly urge the NYSDOT to address the serious inequities of, and economic injustice from I-81. As an educator in SESD, it is my job to provide healthy spaces of learning, yet I cannot do this when even the air our students breathe is not healthy. Members in the community closest to I-81 are at higher risks of health-related issues because of air pollution. 30% of students at Dr. King Elementary suffer from asthma and other respiratory conditions, over 3 times the national average of 9%. Therefore, the 81 on-ramp and roundabout should be moved as far away from Dr. King as possible, and certainly no less than 600 feet away. Additionally, the jobs allocated to the 81 project should come from community members closest to I-81 who have been most affected by its existence in the first place. These are just a couple examples of the numerous ways in which I-81 is a racial justice issue and has been since its original construction. Therefore, I stand in complete solidarity with all the comments and concerns voiced by UJTF and NYCLU, and demand economic, racial, and environmental reparations for the harm I-81 has brought. Thank you.
Next to speak is David Blaylock, followed by Derek Pratt. And I'd remind everyone the next speaker, Mr. Pratt, you come line up here in the aisle.
I think you meant me. My name is David Babcock. B as in boy, A-B-C-O-C.
Oh, sorry, it's my mistake, just a handwriting. I apologize.
Okay. Well, my handwriting isn't the best sometimes. I'm a representative, or I'm engaged with the Moving People Transportation Coalition. I'm a 32-year resident of the town of Clay, and I've studied this project as a volunteer member of the coalition for the past 7 years. 2 points. First, as a person who grew up and lives in the northern suburbs, I am a suburban resident who strongly supports the community grid alternative. A wheel will fail if its hub is not strong. The city of Syracuse is the hub of our region. For our region to be as vibrantly alive as possible, our city needs to be as strong as possible, environmentally, economically, socially, and culturally. I believe implementing the community grid alternative will allow all of us to work together toward a stronger, more vibrant, and more inclusive Central New York, much more effectively than with the Viaduct Alternative. Second, as the chosen alternative for I-81 is further designed and then constructed, I believe NYSDOT needs to facilitate active, meaningful public participation throughout. The public's voice must be able to make a difference as this project continues, because unlike many of the NYSDOT employees and contractors working on this project, hundreds of thousands of residents of Central New York, as well as many travelers from areas outside Central New York, will feel the ongoing effects of this project for many decades. For residents like me, it's in our self-interest to engage significantly throughout all aspects of this project, and the engagement from the public needs to be accepted, acted upon by those responsible for this project to maximize its effectiveness. The public needs to be kept informed. The public must be able to provide input to the project leaders, and the public deserves responses to the ideas that we will continue to submit. In addition, some orientation and funding to support the public's input may be warranted and should be available from the FHWA and/or NISDOT. Include in the final EIS more specific information about how NYSDOT will encourage public participation and act upon the public's input during design and construction. Similarly, it is very important
30 seconds.
that NYSDOT maintain its own active involvement throughout this project, rather than delegating complete phases of the project to contractors so that you implement lessons learned from the I-690 Teal Avenue project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Babcock. Next is Derek Pratt, who will be followed by Bill Sanford.
Hi, I'm Derek Pratt, D-E-R-R-I-C-K-P-R-A-T-T. I'm speaking tonight as just an individual, but informed by my experiences as president of the Greater Sullivan Area Chamber of Commerce and as an educator at the Erie Canal Museum. Is this not high enough? Okay. Lovely, thank you. First, I am a lifelong resident of Chittenango, New York, and I believe that the community grid and its improvements to 481 and 690 will be a positive boon for our communities in the suburbs and its businesses and residents. Additionally, as an educator at the Erie Canal Museum and as an enthusiast of all history in central New York, I believe the community grid also will help our community to more further embrace our history with things like the Canal District, the aqueduct, etc., and also right the historic wrongs that were perpetrated by the construction of the original I-81 viaduct on our communities, especially our communities of color. Obviously, there are some things that need to be addressed in the plan, like as many people have mentioned, the roundabout near MLK, etc. But yes, I fully support the community grid and hope we move forward on this as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Next to speak is Bill Sanford, who will be followed by Oceana Fair.
B-I-L-L-S-A-N-F-O-R-D. I have to admit that I am standing here today a little bit frustrated, and I hope that's not a reflection of my advanced years. So what I'm frustrated about is I hear the back and forth that we're having here and also in yesterday's Zoom meetings, and it crosses my mind that, you know, we could almost have a consensus in this community if we would at least look at the entire central New York community. And we have a possible plan out there that could be looked at that may satisfy that, which is, you know, the community grid, which I am for, as well as perhaps a flying bridge or some sort of a way to get high-speed travel through our community. And there is a way to satisfy the folks on both sides of the issue, if there are sides on this issue. And I think that that's incumbent upon the DOT to take a look at that. And if it means a couple of months more to have more comments or to look at it, after 12 and a half years, I don't think that'll make a big difference. And so I would suggest that you would look at that and also look at and give an opportunity for a formal presentation of the flying bridge concept along with the grid, and you will get a consensus or close to it in this community.
Thank you, Mr. Sanford. Next to speak is Oceana Fair, followed by Dave Mankiewicz.
Oceana Fair, Oceanna-Fair. Hi, my name is Oceana Fair. I am a homeowner in the city of Syracuse, down on the south side. I am also a retired nurse and the South Side branch leader of Families for Lead Freedom Now, a community organization determined to stop childhood lead poisoning in our community. I call upon the New York State Department of Transportation to ensure the safety and health of those who will be endangered by the demolition of the I-81 viaduct. Construction work on steel bridges that contain lead paint have poisoned both workers and children in near vicinity. This fact has been documented by the Centers for Disease Control's Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Reports and the New England Journal of Medicine, among other sources. The Southside branch of Families for Lead Freedom Now has 7 clear expectations from NYSDOT's oversight in viaduct demolition. 1. NYSDOT should complete its work on lead risk with a health assessment per the Centers for Disease Control publication titled CDC Recommendations for Improving Health Through Transportation Policy. 2. When demolition of the bridge span occurs, the properly sealed and fitted tarp or similar containment structure must be in place to contain lead dust and prevent contamination of the air, water, and soil in the vicinity of the I-81 viaduct demolition. Weekly testing of the air, water, and soil for lead should occur within a 6-block radius of where people live, walk, and play for the duration of any bridge demolition work. 3. NYSDOT should instruct the contractor that the ground beneath the demolition must be kept clean of lead dust, that workers shall have access to clean work clothes, hand washing equipment, and lead-free eating facilities. Everything possible should be done to prevent the carrying home of lead dust by employees to his or her family. NYSDOT should employ Upstate Medical's Occupational Health Clinic Center to monitor the well-being of all workers performing demolition. 5. NYSDOT should arrange for ongoing free blood lead testing of all children in a 6-block radius duration of demolition. 6. Data from all forms of lead testing should be made public on a quarterly basis. And 7. Removal of the viaduct should be engineered to minimize lead exposure. NYSDOT should ensure
30 seconds.
Workers have properly fitting respirators to protect against lead poisoning, should also reveal how the demolition will occur, as experts tell us it matters how it's done. Specifically, will demolition take place through torch cutting, which causes toxic lead fumes, or by safer methods such as using hydraulic shears or by mechanical dismantling? Families for Lead Freedom will be submitting a more detailed written statement prior to the deadline, and we support the community grid. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fair. Next to speak is Dave Mankiewicz, followed by Richard Kornbluth.
Good afternoon. My name is David Mankiewicz. It's Mankiewicz. I am the Senior Vice President of Center State CEO. CEO is an economic development strategist and business leadership organization with a vision for a vibrant, globally connected region where business thrives and all people prosper. First, NYSDOT is right. The community grid is the best means to achieve the goals of this project. The construction of the I-81 viaduct created an elevated highway that has divided the city, destroyed viable neighborhoods and businesses, and forced residents to relocate. It eroded the city's property tax base by demolishing tax-paying properties and driving down the valuation of adjacent land. It concentrated traffic in the center city, leading to increased vehicle emissions and adverse health impacts. This project addresses safety, structural, and operational deficiencies of a roadway that doesn't meet Federal Highway Administration standards. Meeting those standards on the path of the existing I-81 with a viaduct requires destruction of more buildings and residences without changing the conditions that I just cited above. Why double down on a failed strategy when there are better solutions available? The community grid must benefit the people of our community and address economic and environmental justice issues. While the insertion of a roundabout along the path of Business Loop 81 is a good solution to reduce speeds and emissions, NISDOT should continue to work with the community on its relocation while also making improvements to the Dr. King School. The width of Business Loop 81 right-of-way should be reduced to leave as much land as possible for redevelopment. And we urge the creation of a Community Redevelopment Commission comprised of local stakeholders to ensure the highest quality, most inclusive redevelopment opportunities. And we encourage NISDOT to do all in its power to maximize opportunity for the work to be done by local businesses and residents. The community needs to recognize that time is of the essence in this decision. The infrastructure bill has passed the Senate. When President Biden sent his original fact sheet on the American Jobs Plan to Congress, there were only 2 highway projects specifically cited in that bill by name, and I-81 in Syracuse was one of them. The U.S. Transportation Secretary has already been here to view the project.
30 seconds.
Chuck Schumer, as the Senate Majority Leader, can shepherd the project for us. There is $800 million in the state budget to initiate construction. The stars are aligned. We cannot allow this opportunity to slip through our fingers because special interests claim they need 6 more months to study a project that has been studied exhaustively by this community for over a decade. After 10 years of discussion and debate, it's time to move on. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and we look forward to working with NISDOT in the implementation of this important project.
Next to speak is Richard Kornbluth,
Yeah.
followed by Minch Lewis.
RICHARDKORNBLUTH. I am on the coordinating committee for the CNY Solidarity Coalition, and in that role, I represent the coalition to the Urban Jobs Task Force. I'm going to be relatively brief because I'll submit a longer comment in writing. I have lived in Syracuse since 1967. When I arrived here, there was a relatively vibrant manufacturing sector, and I watched that manufacturing sector just literally disappear over the last 50 years. And with that sector disappearing, along went high-paying blue-collar jobs. And I've also watched the housing value in the city of Syracuse deteriorate over that period of time as white flight had people leaving the city, which resulted in reduced revenues for the school system and for the education system and for city services. So there's a long-standing poverty problem in the city, and I am here to speak specifically about the potential jobs growth that can be obtained through the construction project on Route 81. The potential for jobs will have benefits not just in the immediate term in terms of the employment that will be created, but will also bring revenue into the city and also create the potential for people who earn a decent living and have construction experience and skills to actually start small businesses, which will create, a new era of revenue growth and small business growth within the city. And that can only be obtained if there are jobs for local residents within the city of Syracuse. So I totally support the Urban Jobs Task Force call for not just the project labor agreement, but for the community workforce provisions that would guarantee at least a 15 to 20% participation by local, meaning city of Syracuse and the nearby suburbs that are adjacent to the city. And I thank you, and I'll supply more comments in writing.
Next to speak is Minch Lewis. After that, we'll pause for a brief break.
Hello, my name is Minch Lewis. That's M-I-N-C-H-I-N. Last name is Lewis, L-E-W-I-S. I live in the city of Syracuse and have analyzed the current I-81 issues with a goal of better connecting areas of our community. I reiterate the message I delivered yesterday that we all need more time to review the DEIS. Time is important. We have heard about the benefits, but there are many concerns. The community grid would divert thousands of cars and trucks to city streets during rush hour. It would be dangerous for school children. The roundabout at Dr. King Elementary School has to go. The community grid would create new suburban sprawl and environmental damage by widening 481 at a cost of $800 million. The community grid would jeopardize thousands of jobs located in the businesses along the I-81 corridor and more that rely on I-81 to get to work. The community grid would increase the air pollution in the city neighborhoods by introducing stop-and-go congestion on residential streets. These concerns can be addressed. I am here to recommend a significant addition to the community grid, an elevated, cable-stayed roadway approximately 7 stories high above the surface with open space and the community grid below. The grid plus skyway would reduce air pollution because it would not disperse heavy traffic onto city streets. It would eliminate the exit at Dr. King Elementary School by keeping the exit at Adams Street. It would improve safety by eliminating the 690-81 interchange and by maintaining a 45-mile-per-hour speed limit through the city. It would support the economy and the jobs that are based on proximity and access to I-81. It would allow the design of the boulevard under the skyway with narrower lanes to benefit pedestrians. It would reallocate the $800 million from 481 in the suburbs. $600 million could pay for the skyway. The remaining $200 million would be allocated to the neighborhood improvements subject to local control for housing, jobs, and economic investment. For these reasons, I recommend that DOT should take the extra time and with real community input should develop the grid and skyway alternative. Thank you.
So at this time, we're going to take a brief break. We're going to resume at 6. At 6 o'clock, we're going to rerun the presentation because a lot of people are coming at 6. If you filled out a card and you have not spoken yet, you will be the next to speak, front in line to speak, I should say, after we run the presentation again. But we're going to take a 15-minute break. We're going to start back up at 6, and the video will play again, and then we'll get back to speakers.